What is up guys, this is Wim for the Melodic Techno School, and in this video I will show you my top 3 workflow hacks for music production. And make sure to watch this video until the very end because I have a very nice free download in this video included. Number 1, setting up a project. And this is really one of the biggest time savers out there. If you know my videos, you probably already know how I set up my projects, but this time I really want to go through here and show you exactly why and how I'm doing this. So first of all, I have all elements in my track in those 3 major groups here. The first one is for the low end, which includes the kick, the bass and sometimes even the tom. The second one is for all the drums, and the third one is for all the synth sounds. Now if we go in here, you can already see I already have a little bit of processing on every single track applied, and this can really save you a lot of time because on my bass I always do a little bit of EQing, and also almost every single time I sidechain the bass to the kick here. For the kick the same thing applies. I already have an EQ here and a drum rack where I can load up a couple different kicks and see which one is working the best. Also I've already created this MIDI loop here because my kick is pretty much the same in every project. Now the reason why we want to group this together is because usually you also want to apply some group processing. And for that I have this Arturia compressor here with a preset that I always use. So every time I finish my kick and bass, I can just turn this compressor on and simply tweak the threshold to the right input amount. On top of that, it's always a good idea to cut away the frequencies below 20 to 30 Hz and also above 20,000 Hz because our ears can't hear them anyways, but there's still some volume going on, and of course all of that is going into the master, so it's just better to cut this away on every single group here. And that's exactly the same thing that you will see on my drums here. I just have this clean equalizer. This time I'm cutting away a little bit more of those low frequencies, and also I have a compressor by Arturia here, which is again very important to turn this off until you have all your sounds here sorted out, and then you can turn it on and just tweak that threshold for the perfect amount. Now what is also a huge time saver is to already have those MIDI tracks ready. The clap pattern is pretty much in every single track the same. I have a simple 16th pattern for my hi-hats, then I have this offbeat pattern for an open hi-hat, and then for the percussion sound, of course, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet, but what I have here is already a drum rack, so I can just throw in a couple samples here. Now over here you will usually find all my synth sounds, and I have an equalizer here on every single track, but that's pretty much it. The only thing you will see pretty much on every single track here, that they are all already mixed to -6 dB. In the kick and bass we have it to -3, -2 over here, and then -3 on the kick and bass group again. And this is really a lifesaver for all beginners out there, because I know so many beginners who always mix their tracks way too loud and they're already peaking on the master. If you have the same problem, it's really important to just set them down a little bit, like -6 worked perfect for me. And so even if you're in the flow and just creating this track, they're already mixed in a bit lower. And with that technique, you can always really nail your -6 dB mix down, which should always be our target for every single mix down we make. But really the biggest time saver here in this template is really the send effects that we have over here. You can see I have 4 different send effects over here, which are mostly reverbs, and we have 1 delay effect. So let's have a closer look here. You can see I created my own racks here. So after a couple years of production, I really figured out that I always stick with this Valhalla vintage verb here for my big hall reverbs. And this is just a preset from Audio Tent here that I got stuck with, and it works perfect most of the time, but not on every single project. So I actually have a second reverb loaded up here. So every single time I already have a couple synth sounds in here, I will start using my switch knob here so I can switch between those 2 reverbs and see which one is working the best. Usually I stick really with this vintage verb here, and I also have the high cut here mapped already, so I can really cut away a little bit of those frequencies, because for those hall reverbs it's really nice sometimes to have this darker atmosphere. I've also created this equalizer curve here, where I can of course also go in and just take this a little bit down here. And another very important thing here for the send effects is that you really cut away those low frequencies. We really don't want to have any bass in the reverb, so that is just making sure we're cutting this away. And another very underrated thing that I already mentioned in a couple tutorials, that you should really start more to play around with your stereo width, and that especially applies for such effects like reverb or delay. And for that I just loaded up this utility here, where I can always turn down the stereo width a little bit, and that can really sometimes help to clean your mix up a bit. Now the next one is the send for my drums here. I have pretty much the same technique where I can switch through 2 different reverb sounds here, and the same thing applies here for the width of course. After that we have actually another reverb effect. For this I'm using the Valhalla Shimmer, which I really just use very minimal in my tracks. Sometimes I use it on this very big and huge synth sounds or for some effect transitions, but because we usually have a super long feedback in the sound, We don't want to use it too much, but for that I already turned the width down here by 70%, so it's not distracting the other elements too much. And also I have my EQ here applied already and boosting those high frequencies, which works really nice on this shimmer effect. Now the last send effect is echo send, because of course you usually want to use some delay in your track, and this is just way faster. This time I also have two different ones applied here. You can see this is a bit more of a high delay with some really nice resonance settings here. I have some reverb also applied. The same here, but they definitely sound completely different because we also have some different timings. And of course on the delay it also works sometimes really nice to make this almost into mono. And the last rack here you will find on my master chain. And this is just a rack that can help you while mixing your track. As you can see, we have a mono option here, which is just flipping the switch on and off here. So sometimes it's really nice while mixing to turn your track into mono, and that way you can just check how your mix is performing in mono. For example, on a big sound system in a club, they are all in mono. And also you should always check if your track is not causing any phasing in the mono mode. I also have this gain knob here because sometimes I mix the track way too low and I end up somewhere here. So I can just really fast and easy bring this up sometimes. And then I actually have those two low cut filters. This is nothing that I leave on when I export the track. This is more of a function that can really save your ears for some long production sessions, because if you sit on your computer for 2-3 hours and you're producing on a very high volume, and especially if you're using headphones, your ears will start hurting after some times and you can really destroy your ears with it. So I just have those two low cut options here that I turn on and off at some points to just make it a bit more comfortable for my ears. And yeah, this is pretty much the way how I structure my tracks. It honestly saves me so much time while producing, so it's really useful to set up your project properly. Then you just go into preferences here, you go to file, and then you can save your current project as a default. And if you like the way how I structure my projects, this project template is actually absolutely free to download in the description. And guys, don't worry if you don't have all of those pro plugins, because I actually took some extra time and created the same version where I just used Ableton stock plugins. Number 2, use your keyboard. And now I want to show you two different ways how you can really speed up your workflow in Ableton much faster. And the first one, we're actually going to go back into my racks here, and you see why producing would be such a pain to every time go into those racks and really turn those knobs by hand. So there's a much quicker and easier way to do this. If you just hit Command K on your keyboard, this will bring up this view over here, and you can really map every single parameter. I mapped this to the number 1 of my keyboard, this to number 2, and this to number 3. And that way, while producing, I can always just hit this number 1 if I want to save my ears a little bit, and sometimes just do a quick check if my track is working in mono, and I can turn it off again. And of course, something that everybody should be a master of is the Ableton shortcuts. And if you still don't know many of the Ableton shortcuts, I really challenge you after this video to just take 10 minutes of your time and really dedicate it to learning the shortcuts. There's not many you need to know. And for that, I actually created a free PDF for you guys where I wrote down all of my favorite shortcuts in here. It's just 18 shortcuts, and you probably already know half of them. And you can see I wrote them down for Mac and for Windows here, and the link for that is in the description. So guys, it's finally time to master the Ableton shortcuts. Number 3, recycle your work. And for that, there's two really nice ways to really save some certain elements in your projects. For example, let's say you came up with a nice patch in some plugin, and of course you could go in here and save the preset, but this time what is really making this sound amazing is all of the processing. So maybe you already know this trick. You can just group this whole chain, and then you just click on this one over here. You can rename it, and then you can just save this whole rack over here. Now it's just in some random user library here, and you will probably not find it again. One way is to dedicate one of those beautiful colors over here to all your racks, and that way you can just easily find it back in here. Or of course, another way would be to just drag this in your own sample folder and for example make a folder where if you saved all of the racks here. Now another amazing trick that really saved me hours of production, but actually most people don't know it, is that you always should have the folder here where you have all of your Ableton projects saved. Now you can see this is all the projects that I recently worked on, and now if you for example remember, oh, I had this really nice kick and bass line in some of the track and you spend hours on working on that, it's just very easy to just go back in here. Then you just open up your project. For example, this is my kick and bass group over here, and we can just take this whole thing and load it up in our new project. And this can really save you endless amounts of time. You can already see I really applied a ton of processing here. And now of course you can just go in here and literally just play around with this loop a little bit, change it up a bit, maybe change the notes and start up a completely new track. And that is just really also a big life hack if you're starting out with a new EP. But that way we just have the same elements like in this track, but of course it sounds completely different and we can start a completely new track, but we have a very nice fluid 2-track EP with that method. And yeah guys, those are my top 3 workflow hacks for Ableton Live. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and of course don't forget to head to the comment section for the downloads included in this video. Thanks for watching, I see you in the next one.